This is Tom Jacobs from tdjacobs.com and also healingsuicide.com, and I'm an evolutionary astrologer and also an energy worker, a channel, and also a psychic medium. And at tdjacobs.com, you'll find a lot of tools to help you along your path, including the True Black Moon Lilith report and 2 other original reports on Chiron and emotional healing. And a bunch of books, bunch of things. So go check that out. Whatever you're into, spirituality, program crystals, astrology, there's a lot of stuff on there for you. And at healingsuicide.com, there's an explanation of soul and how it experiences its human lives, what happens to a consciousness at and after death, and how we can learn to deal with our difficult emotions to prevent suicide. So that's what that site is about. This video today is on True Black Moon Lilith natal aspects with the moon. This is the second in a series. Yesterday I did one on natal sun, True Black Moon aspects. The first thing to make sure you understand is that I use the True Black Moon Lilith, also called the osculating apogee, and it is not the mean position, which is averaged out. That's the one that's most readily available. So if you're using astro.com to make charts, use H13 instead of an asteroid number in that extended chart selection page under additional bodies and asteroids, H13. If you use, and that's for the True Black Moon. If you use the one in the little box to the left of the page above that window, you will see Lilith, but that's the true, or that's the mean position, sorry, the average position. I recommend you don't use that. It's like asking a Barbie doll what a woman is like. It's not real. It's a plasticized version of this expectation of something manageable. Now the True Black Moon, this movement is erratic. It is a point, not a body, and it's a function of the moon's orbit around the Earth. So it's fluctuating, it changes all the time. It doesn't just, the mean position is meant to be controllable. It moves around the chart. The point, the True Black Moon, goes back and forth over the same sector of the chart for months and years at a time, and then it makes a whole circuit of the chart. So, so I highly recommend you use that. If you use other astrology software, just dig into the preferences and what displayed points or whatever you're using, and look for true when it comes to Black Moon. You'll have an option of true or mean. Use the true. So anyway, I treat Lilith not as a demon or the mother of all demons. I don't assume evil with any archetype in the chart. What I do is I talk about it as the instinctive wild. In your root chakra, there is a wisdom that connects you to the cycles of nature, and that is connected to your endocrine system, so your hormones, your biochemistry, and that affects your emotions and your energy. So when something's right for you, it feels right. When something's wrong for you, it feels wrong. That's Lilith. I always think about it as this idea of looks good on paper, where someone says you have to meet my friend Susan. You say, sure, Susan sounds great. You get a whole list of why Susan's great. You meet Susan and you can't stand her and there's no reason. It's chemistry. So Lilith has a lot to do with chemistry when it comes to how we treat our bodies, how we treat other people, how they treat us, what work we do, what foods we eat, how we approach and engage in sexuality. It's about chemistry and instinct and how those are tied together. So people who live Lilith themes really strongly are sometimes made wrong by other people. So sometimes people with strong Lilith energy expect punishment or sanction or abuse, or even being shunned, thrown out of somewhere, being made wrong, having a fake case made against them for being wrong, because the culture that we live in is training us, we're training each other to only want to deal with what can be controlled. What can't be controlled, we feel we have to shame or get rid of or tame. I was even just hearing this long extended interview on Fresh Air with this guy who breaks horses, but how he defines breaking is very different. It's not this breaking the will of the animal. It's just learning to make a connection with that animal. How he did it is a more Lilith way of doing it. But when you try to break the will of an animal, that's like a very unhealthy Lilith. But our culture sees nature and animals and the earth itself as resources to be exploited. That's where we've been for many thousands of years. So people who have strong Lilith energies, they come in and they disrupt the status quo because they're not controllable, or they're not interested in submitting to the status quo. So people with strong Lilith energies sometimes feel like they've been made the villain or they've been punished for just naturally being who they are. So my take on this is, if you inhabit your natural self informed by Lilith in authentic, natural ways, and you relax about it, and you expect nothing but freedom, like you don't expect to be punished, you won't be punished. Because if you're fearing abuse, you'll get it. If you're fearing sanction or punishment, you will attract it, because what comes to you matches what you're vibrating on the inside. So now that's just my little intro. I guess I'm doing a different intro for all of these aspect videos. So you should watch all of them to get the full story here. To get the full story on your own Lilith, there is the True Black Moon Lilith Natal Report, which is an original one that I wrote some years ago, and that's at tdjacobs.com on the Natal Reports page, and it treats house, sign, and aspect of your true Black Moon, which may be up to 30 degrees different from the mean position. Be aware that that's a fact here. Transits and progressions to your Lilith for the next 5 years. That's an automated report. You order through my site and it gets delivered to you pretty quickly. Also, Lilith Healing the Wild, the book, and there is also an multi-hour MP3 set called the Lilith Intensive on tdjacobs.com that takes the material in the book just a little further, a little more explanation and fleshing out of those themes. So with the moon, your natal moon is about what you need to do to be happy. It's what you enjoy doing. It's how you deal with emotions, how you've been taught to deal with emotions, feelings, and needs. In your chart, it does often represent something, the disposition of emotions or how emotions are dealt with in your family system when you're a kid, like how you were shown how to deal with emotions. It can also indicate literally your mother, but it might not. It could be a nurturing family member or loved one. It may not be literally the mother or even a woman. I try to teach people not to get too specific about that, because the point is how you deal with emotions and what's nurturing for you. So in your chart, you have to constantly feed the moon to be happy. You have to constantly do something to maintain happiness. It's also about safety and security and feeling supported by others and by life in the world. But of course, when humans are young, we put all that expectation of safety and support on our families and our parents. So it does represent all of these things. Now the true Black Moon, this instinct, this changeability, it looks good on paper, but it's not right for me, right? The need to be autonomous, when that's an aspect with the moon, the natal moon, your emotional nature is wrapped up with that in some way. So let's start with the conjunction. Of course, the orb I use is 8 degrees. It's pretty standard. With a conjunction, 2 energies are merged. So your moon, how you experience emotion, and this wild, fluctuating need to honor instinct of Lilith, those are merged together. So your feelings, your happiness may fluctuate quite a lot. Your ability to be emotionally stable sometimes, might be lacking sometimes, but your emotions are changing. You're getting input. You're feeling in your body, not just emotions, but you're feeling your response emotionally to the world around you. It's instinctive. Again, it's chemical. So people with the moon conjunct the true Black Moon Lilith are seen often as erratic and are seen as changeable and maybe even not reliable, but they need to do things that make them happy that have to do with instinct. So they may do this and then do that. It might be changeable. Now, Lilith does also sometimes represent, like I said, being punished for being changeable or being original or being not fitting, the status quo. And so if someone has been punished for being Lilith, for being authentic, there can be suppression of emotion with Lilith in general, with the true Black Moon Lilith in general. Conjunct the moon, it may mean that some of those difficult emotions need to come out on a regular basis in order for you to be happy. So as I was talking about this, I'm thinking also this idea of moon, you giving nurturing as well as receiving nurturing, if that's erratic, your needs change, but also your ability to meet others' needs can change as well. So it can actually, the true Black Moon conjunct natal moon can actually have you sometimes dissociate or disconnect a little from what others need, you as a nurturing figure, in order for you to focus on what you need, because it's not about being selfish, but it's about getting into the root chakra and realizing what is it that I need for my own foundation and my health and my sanity, my happiness right now. So sometimes there's a very individualistic thing with Lilith. If you're familiar with Lilith's myth, you've heard that, she left Adam, she lived in the wilderness forever. This is explained in Lilith Healing the Wild and also the Black Moon Lilith report, Black Moon Lilith Natal report. It can look in that standard telling of the myth like she's not oriented toward a relationship, but she is. She's the natural other half of Adam. Eve came later, by the way. When in that mythology, in that version of mythology, when God split Adam into two, it was Adam and Lilith, not Adam and Eve. Remember, Eve was created later from one of Adam's ribs, so she would always be subservient and know she was not an equal. But Lilith knows she's an equal. So anyway, there can be that suppression, that anger, that fiery quality of Lilith that comes out through this person's emotions. And like I said, they might be seen as erratic. What they need to do is honor nature. They need to spend time in nature, but they also need to realize their bodies are extensions of nature. So they need to eat natural foods. They need to, not eat a lot of processed stuff and that kind of stuff with Lilith conjunct moon in order to be happy and healthy. It can indicate the mother or family regarding emotions was erratic or is erratic. That's possible in that case. Or that person's nurturing ability can't be counted on to be consistent, like I was mentioning earlier. It can be a lot of things, but to get your full story, again, get the Black Moon Lilith Natal Report through the Natal Reports page on tdjacobs.com. Now, moving on to the sextile. Sextiles are about 60 degrees, and I use an orb of 6 degrees, which is standard. And they trigger and they, my idea is that they poke and they say, to get your attention, hey, 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 and you really can't avoid responding because that stimulus is coming in constantly. That's the way that sextiles can work. Now, if you're being quiet and that activates you, then you're activated. But if you're active and it never stops, it can take you into loops of reactivity and making assumptions and kind of flying off the handle because you're responding and then something's responding to you and then you're responding back. It can create this cycle of not being grounded. So I recommend with sextiles, let that impulse or impetus for creativity come in because it's a stirring influence. It can be great, like a great idea, a breath of fresh air, but it can also get you, if you're not grounded, stuck and maybe even anxious sometimes. People assume sextiles and trines are positive. They can be, but think about somebody who won't stop poking you. Is that positive? Like you've already responded. They won't leave you alone. Is that positive? So the sextile between the true Black Moon and the moon means that your emotional nature is triggered by your perceptions, your instinctive responses to what is in the world around you. So is this right for me? Is this wrong for me? Like here, meet my friend Susan. You meet her, your skin crawls. Well, that will trigger your emotional thing. I didn't mention when I was talking about the moon earlier in this video, that moon can also be where we try to protect ourselves and create that shell or that kind of Cancerian crab-like thing where we retreat. So in this case, with the moon sextile, the true Black Moon Lilith, you might do that. When you realize something's wrong for you, you might retreat immediately and not even realize that you've done it. But it can also be great for connecting with other people if you're open and you're willing to say yes and no to others' influences. If they're not good for you, you're willing to say no. So that can be, things in the world, your response to nature, your response to certain foods, triggering your emotions. And it can also be Lilith like others, people who are wild or uncontrolled or erratic, changeable, instinctive in their bodies, earthy, all that kind of thing. They can actually trigger you in certain ways, and you can also trigger them. So it's not always bad, it's not always good, but there's a definite thing about you will learn more about your emotional needs through being stimulated by Lilith people and situations. Okay, now moving on to the square. and I use an orb of 8 degrees, again, which is standard. Squares present friction, pressure, and criticism, where one body says to the other one, you're doing it wrong. So no matter what it is, each one says to the other, you're doing it wrong, because they have different ways of doing things. So the moon, what you have to do to be happy and healthy and feel safe and secure, how you experience emotion and what you consider safety and security, and that in square to the true Black Moon Lilith, these instinctive moments, these, even people and dynamics who represent the instinctive wild, who trust their bodies, who are changeable, who may seem erratic to you or others, they might make you put up a wall and try to defend yourself, because they're kind of inadvertently perhaps pushing on you to open up and change. Now your moon says, I just want to be here and create this little thing so I can feel safe. And the Lilith square, true Black Moon Lilith square, brings out, is trying to get you to open up to new experiences. So if you have this natal square between moon and true Black Moon Lilith natally, one of your jobs is to be open to the wild, to what can't be controlled, and not presume that any change means a loss of safety and security. Remember, the moon is very reactive, and so, and that sense of I have to, circle the wagons around my heart or whatever. And when you get that going, the moon sees a threat, a square can feel like a threat. And because it's somebody saying you're doing it wrong, or here, do this differently. So so you can learn through opening up to these alternate perspectives. Let's say moon has to do with habits as well. So let's say that you go to this restaurant, you always get the same thing. Well, a friend comes with you next time, and she's a little more adventurous when it comes to food. She might say, you always get that? Here, get this instead. And you might say, but I just like getting what I get. And there's nothing wrong with that. But she might say, have a little adventure. You don't know what that other thing could be like. That's kind of Lilith trying to open you up to new experience. And you may defend against it. You may open up. Squares are not bad, just like trines and sextiles are not always good, because people who square you have a great deal to teach you that you don't even realize you don't know or could learn. Moving on to the trine, it's roughly 120 degrees, and it's said to be a good aspect, but it can lead to laziness and complacency and carelessness. I use 8-degree orb, which is standard, and the idea is it's a boost between two energies. They have like an information support network or a mutual support society, where I sometimes think of it as cheerleading, where one is like doing something and the other one goes, yeah, keep doing it, and it's like back and forth. And so if one is being willfully blind or careless, the other one might say, yeah, it looks like you're doing great, keep it up. But just the same as if one is doing something amazing, the other can say, hey, that's great. So essentially with these two bodies in trine, we kind of have to take responsibility for doing each of them in a healthy way, because they will boost each other. So moon, happiness, safety, security, how I deal with my emotions. Trine, the true Black Moon, you're going to get an influx of information from instinctive sources and from natural sources. So you're going to feel good if you're around Lilith people and in Lilith situations where there's respect for the earth, respect for the body, for animals, that we're all part of this ecosystem together, this consciousness ecosystem, as well as the, physical, biological ecosystem. And if you're around somebody who lashes out in anger because she can't control her emotions, or he tries to control everything else because he can't deal with the idea of losing control, these are negative Lilith feelings and manifestations, then you're going to be unhappy, but it's going to be this feedback loop that's going to increase in volume. So you have to be responsible about your moon, making yourself happy, while also being responsible about how you conceive of and react to Lilith energies in others and the world. Now, just like with sextiles, I talk about sextiles being that triggering, that poking, hey, 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 you can't avoid responding. There's a lot of flowing creativity that can come with a trine, a lot of flow that can come in. Like I said, these two energies boost each other. Insights can come in when you have the trine. What do I need? And you realize, like I recently went back to eating a lot more raw food because I was, frankly, having some stress in my life, and I realized my response was not optimal. So I said, how can I, what can I change? And I went back to eating more raw food, which is helping me just deal with my energy better, because my body isn't resisting or being lowered, my vibration isn't being lowered by as much cooked food, whatever, that's a whole other topic. But anyway, the flow between it, oh, as soon as I start to feel better because of the way I'm eating, oh yeah, creativity comes. So it's like biology, physicality, emotionality, what you're eating, all those things are wrapped up here, and your emotional self and your ability to be happy with the trine will be boosted if you fix the Lilith thing in your life. So that's one example there. And I actually have the true Black Moon conjunct my natal moon as it happens. So anyway, so I really have to pay attention to that. So moving on to the last Ptolemaic aspect here, it's the opposition, and this is roughly 180 degrees, and I use an orb of 8 degrees, which is standard. And oppositions can feel like confrontations or blocks. One person wants one thing, the other person wants another. So this can be like a standoff, or it can also be that one is surprised by the input or feedback of another, like a deer in the headlights kind of idea. You're frozen because you didn't expect this information or that response or this activity, this behavior. So when your natal moon, what you need to be happy and develop safety and security and how to deal with your emotions, when it's opposing the true Black Moon Lilith, you may feel that chaos interrupts your safety. You may feel that sometimes in your life that you can't be stable because everything's changing around you, or these changeable people are kind of forcing their agenda on you and you're just trying to stand still. Moon is a kind of inwardly focused archetype. You're just trying to stand still and develop some stability. I haven't used that word a lot in this video, but with Moon, that happiness rests a lot on feeling stable and secure. But you may find other people seem to interrupt it. Now, the thing with an opposition, they're not always bad, just like squares aren't always bad. I would say that it's 50-50, but it's all in your interpretation of what's happening. With an opposition, something says to you, did you see this about yourself? Or, hey, step back a minute and you'll be able to see what I see about you. So you can gain a tremendous amount of, after that initial deer in the headlight experience of shock, you can gain a lot of insight about yourself that you can't see on your own. Because somebody, imagine, somebody is seeing you full on, like opposing you, standing, like your shoulders are lined up and you're looking at each other across the room. That person can see you in a way you can't. That person can say, hey, your fly is down. You didn't know it. Or, hey, there's some mustard on your tie. You didn't see it, whatever it is. So oppositions can be great if you can deal with what looks like a little shock or surprise, and if you don't feel overly vulnerable to criticism. Like if you expect to be punished or criticized, that opposition can be really hard. In this case, it's people who are earthy, who are in their bodies, who have a healthy, grounded sense of sexuality and sensuality, people who eat right for their bodies, people who treat the earth right, people who are changeable and erratic, maybe, but people who are also autonomous and forthright, because part of the Lilith archetype is steering the ship of your own life and being autonomous. Like I said, it is about being in partnership, but it's about not, losing your ability to negotiate and compromise, and never disrespecting or dishonoring your instinctive truth. So people like that may oppose you and make you at times feel unsafe. In that case, it could be, when you're a kid, someone in your family is like that, and you just felt like you could never relax. Or it could be that somebody else in the house was like that, and your mom could never relax. So therefore, you felt like you could never relax. That's the idea of the opposition, the perception that you might be prevented from having safety and security and relaxing and being happy because of the influence of these other things. So to get the full story on your true Black Moon Lilith, get the Black Moon Lilith Natal Report at tdjacobs.com on the Natal Reports page. Also, there's the Chiron Report, and then Living in the Present Tense, which includes both Chiron and Lilith, as well as the asteroid Lucifer and Pluto as far as emotional healing. And the Lilith Healing the Wild book. And thanks for your time and energy, and all that is at tdjacobs.com. Take care.